So this is why KP is the nuts. So West Ham are due to announce, if not already announced by the time I put out the signing of Kalvin Phillips, initially on loan from Man City, and with a option to buy around 35, could be up to £40 million. We're not too sure about the final details. Now, Anton did a great show yesterday about what Kalvin Phillips brings to West Ham. And I just wanted to go a bit more deeper into it because I think he's the perfect signing for us. I genuinely do think he's the perfect signing. And hopefully, after me sort of waffling on for the next 10 minutes or so, you'll get an idea of why I think he is the perfect man for the job. Now, this is going to be quite stat heavy. I must warn you, it's going to be pretty stat heavy. So, if it's not your thing, fair enough. But I just wanted to warn you from the outset, there will be a lot of stats on here because I think it really does underpin. I know there's a lot of positivity around the Kalvin Phillips signing. England international, good age, loan deal, option to buy rather than obligation to buy. A lot of good things, I think. In terms of positives, there's also some negative comments as well, because there will be, because no deal is going to be perfectly receptive by everyone. In that, he hasn't played a lot, and I get that totally. I've been looking at his last full season with Leeds because the move to Man City didn't pan out. It hasn't panned out to him. If you listen to guys like Stephen from Esteemed Company, goes into he put a show up yesterday, was it the day before? Went into a lot of detail about why he think it didn't work with Kalvin at Man City. Pep has got on record in the press conference today, actually, saying, he wished he got him some more minutes and he deserves it. He's a great character. He's got great work ethic. But sometimes it doesn't work out, does it? It doesn't work out. There's, same as Danny Ings. I mean, I could say probably the same with Danny. Great work ethic, doesn't stop trying, just hasn't worked out. And I think there's a reason why. I think, to be honest, it wasn't going to win from the start when he moved to City. There's a lot of other clubs. We were after him, as well as the likes of Man United. I think Arsenal were after him as well. And he obviously went to Man City instead. Now, I think it's clear when you look at particularly how he played in the last full season before he left for Leeds. It's pretty clear why I don't think it would work at Man City particularly, and why when he's playing for a side where he's maybe trusted with the ball a bit more as well, like he was at Leeds, you'll see a hell of a different player. I mean, in terms of how he plays, it's quite a unique set of skills. It's a bit of a Liam Neeson job. He has a unique set of skills which he's not afraid to use. He isn't your typical central defensive midfielder, that's for sure. He's not. I wouldn't say like an Alvarez. I mean, Alvarez is a relatively traditional sort of CDM. Get stuck in, can pass. He's still got very good stats for long balls and stuff like that. But just more of a give it and go, quite simple player, where sort of for a CDM you tend to the role is, or it has been, you win the ball and you then play it with relative short simple passes to maybe someone a bit more acclimatized to run with the ball or be more progressive with it. So your job is there as I hated the expression, but used to call it the water carrier. You're there just blocking, like typical someone like David Batty. You wouldn't say he was fantastic. He had it in his locker, but he wouldn't be spraying balls all the time. He'd take the ball and give it to someone quickly and let them do that work. Now, Phillips doesn't do that, or didn't do that at his time at Leeds. And I'm going to be, using his time at Leeds, as I said, as a placeholder in terms of looking at stats, because that's what we're really talking about here specifically, what he brings. Now, in terms of his defensive side of the game, if we look at his stats in terms of the 21-22 season, I think it was, in a bit more detail. So when he was at Dirty Leeds, you can see what I'm sort of trying to sort of talk about in a bit more detail. Let's take off the logo so you can really see it. So these are his stat. And as I said, it is very stat heavy. I do apologize, but I did warn you at the beginning. Now, in terms of defensive side, looking at stats, he does this. He is he does the defending. He's doing the D in the CDM. He ranks really high in terms of things like blocks, interceptions. He breaks up a lot of the play. He and obviously reads the game incredibly well. Hence the interceptions. He preempts where the ball's going to be, so he knows it's there. But what makes from a CDM role, he that's what he does first and foremost. That's what he brings to the table. And indeed, if you're looking at the tackles made in the final third and things like that, and in midfield, he gets about a lot. Something like, was it over 60%? So he's got in the top 63% percentile for tackles in the attacking third. But his main sort of hunting ground is that sort of midfield, middle third, and defensive middle third. That's where he hunts. That's where he gets the ball. Now, what makes him different is when he gets the ball. And that's where he really is going to come into his own. I think we're going to see a hell of a player. He's not going to take the ball and play a simple short pass to a more progressive player, to a Paqueta, and let him do it. He takes that upon himself. He does that job. What makes KP, or Peanuts, as I'm going to call him now affectionately, KP, Peanuts, you get it, is the range of passing. Something Anton mentioned, something Bielsa mentioned in press conferences about how good he was. But in terms of his general, passing ability he has in his locker, he has got, for a CDM, he's winning the ball so often. He's really high for the stats in terms of winning balls, interceptions, blocks, all that type of stuff. And then you overlay passing, and obviously this is in comparison to all the Premier League, all the midfielders, not just defensive midfielders, but any midfielders. So the likes of Kevin De Bruyne and other midfielders who were in the Premier League at the time, he still has a fantastic amount of passing stats as well. Total passing 80 in the top 82% of percentiles. This is having just won the ball himself. Lots and lots of progressive passing, big distances. Now, what's interesting is the short passing. Very short stats for passing, so to speak, which is why I don't think he'd ever fitted in a City system. So for Man City, what they tended to do for a City system is they would keep it tight. They would toy the opposition, get the ball and just play it about simple. Loads of, in terms of number of passes, in terms of short passes, top of the league, possession, top of the league. That's not what Kalvin likes to do out of the box. He likes to get the ball, move forward with progression. He likes to also do a lot of switches. He's very high in terms of stats for switching plays, either left to right, obviously, or right to left. So he doesn't play a patient style of football, which I think is where the discrepancy may be a little bit with City came in. He doesn't play this short, not tippy tappy, that sounds condescending, but you know what I mean, probing game. He's very much about on the front foot, progressing, starting attacks quickly, not being necessarily clever with the ball, but looking for the option and getting out there. Now, as I said, the interesting thing is how he rates really highly in terms of switchings. So he will look to win the ball back and will look for the option. He can go for a simple pass, but actually look for the option to ping it out. And, you see, we're starting to get a bit of a nugget here, people, in terms of why I think he is possibly the perfect midfielder for Moyes' ball. He is bloody good at doing that switch system. Now, I was watching a program today about it, and it's a great stat. He's in the top 10% of the entire league for defensive actions that lead to a shot. And that is actually a stat. It's called the SCA, shot creating actions, and in brackets, defensive. So if you win the ball back and then he's immediately looking to do something that will lead to a shot. He during his time at last season at Leeds, he was in the top 10% in the whole of the league for SCA defensive actions. And that is huge for West Ham. And there's not a lot of people who do that at all. And Kalvin is one of them. So with that in mind, hopefully you can start seeing why I think he's perfect for us. You are perfect to me. Don't know why I've interluded with an Ed Sheeran song, but hey ho, we'll go with it. Now, it's fair to say, so that's a sort of paints a picture of why of how good he is and what he brings. He brings something unique to the table in terms of a CDM. Now, let's look at West Ham. Let's turn the tables and look at West Ham. Now, it's fair to say we play quite a Moyes boys relatively direct. Let's say it's relatively direct. It's not tippy tappy. It's not pleasing on the eye, so to see from the neutrals or from a massive percentage of the fan base as well. It's not going to be Pep Guardiola-esque. It's not beautiful football. It's a distinct style of football, which is quite unique to the Premier League. And, we don't necessarily hold the ball for a lot. So in terms of possession stats, if you look at these, we currently are 16th for possession. I think it's just under 41% possession on average for a EPL game this season from West Ham, and that currently puts us 16th. However, if you overlay the league position, which I always felt fascinating when I saw it, you can see we're relatively an anomaly, and you know the word. We're quite unusual in the fact that we have everyone around us, and then the league position around us dictates that it's not necessarily getting the ball. They can't get the ball. The likes of Palace, Forest, Everton. From our perspective, we're inviting people to have the ball. We're inviting people to have those possessions. And indeed, when you look at the things like the total number of short passes completed in the Premier League, I think we're rated about 17th for that as well. But then when you look at maybe long passing, which is anything over 30 yards, I think we're 4th. So clearly there's a style that we know is associated with Moyes. And the fact that we're 6th shows we're relatively successful at doing it. It might not be exciting football, granted, but it is relatively successful. We invite the opposition onto us, and then we look to win the ball back and attack the space occupied behind the forwards, behind the opposition as they're moving forward with the ball. And that's why someone like Kudus is perfect in terms of our attacking option. That's why Antonio was always good when he was playing and had both his legs and could score, because lightning quick, and particularly with Kudus, expert finisher. Same as Bowie, the ability to sort of run behind the defence. Little dinks over the defence, and Paqueta, through balls, someone like a Geds, his crossfield balls and stuff like that. You can see how it all works. So that's the type of football we play, a game based on soaking up pressure. And with that, quick out counter-attacks. Now, often switching the play from one side to the other as well. We do tend to sort of, clump people on the left-hand side, like with, Paqueta drifts off, and then, someone like JWP will move across, and Emerson, and they'll do these little 3 like triangles. Ben Rama was on there. It's a little triangle thing. They'll be working together and then cross the ball wide or switch the ball wide. If you look at, I don't know, I think it was Kudus's goal against Arsenal. Classic example of how it works. So, that's the style we play. So we want someone who can, in terms of a CDM, or a midfielder in such, could win possession, and look to distribute the ball quickly into an attack. So he's got to have, and also he's got to have a high level of awareness, sort of positional awareness, because soaking up a lot of pressure. You've got to have a strong mentally in terms of knowing where, so you don't sort of concede goals. Looking to intercept, looking for the blocks, looking to win the ball back. Has the defensive ability to put a tackle in, but also the ability to move forward. Quite an unusual set of skills for one person to have. Now, I'll refer you back to the Kalvin Phillips thing at the beginning. Now, we could have the perfect midfielder for the Moyes style of football. Now, as Anton mentioned, yeah, you're right. He hasn't played a lot of football under Pep. He hasn't played hardly anything, to be honest, under Pep at all, particularly in the Premier League. And as Anton mentioned, the fact that Rodri is ahead of him, it's no shame, I think, in not breaking into a side when arguably you've got the greatest player in the world at the moment playing in your position, But again, I've said it before, the type of football Kalvin Phillips likes to play, particularly during his time at Leeds, I think that's a fairer comparison than his time at Man City, isn't necessarily patient. It isn't necessarily toying opponents with the ball, just sort of that European style of football, taking your time and then quickly go. But there's no urgency, they don't seem to, City seem to be working on their own time zone, if that makes sense. And it works for them. They've got the right players to play that. So I think, KP likes to get the ball. Peanuts likes to get the ball. No, I might just call him Nuts, actually. Nuts likes to get the ball and get forward. And that's what Nuts will bring to the London Stadium in abundance. Yes, obviously he needs to stay fit as well. Yes. And yes, in terms of where does he fit in the side, I said I can see him being dropped. Sorry, him coming into the side and Souček being dropped. Because you got to think, before City came in for him, we were linked with him. We were willing to pay 50 million quid for him. They said United were after him, Arsenal were after him. If you're meant to be believed, Moyes has been tracking him for years. Even when he was out of a job, he was compiling players that he'd like to sign. And Phillips was pretty much one or two. He was on the top sort of, the top of the list for in terms of players he needs to come in and players he wants to bring in. So, back then, when we were trying to buy him from Leeds, the idea was he was going to not replace Declan Rice, but work alongside Declan Rice in a two, just like they did in England. And that would have meant Souček would have been dropped anyway. And he was relatively, not early on in his career at West Ham, but he had a couple of seasons. So it's not like he was, it wasn't necessarily a dip in form as well. He was playing well. But he would have been benched to accommodate this sort of dynamic midfield. And I think a midfield free of him, of Nuts, of Edson and JWP is the way that it's going to go. I still think Paqueta will still be on the left-hand side, will drop on, and then they'll overburden that left-hand side, and then Phillips or whoever can get the ball, and Aguirre does it as well, pings it straight over to the right-hand side, switches play. So that's why I think Kalvin Phillips is the perfect midfielder for Moyes ball. End of. Hope you enjoyed that. Apologies for all the stats. I did warn you at the beginning, so you have been warned at the time of recording. Anyway, so hopefully we'll get that all sorted soon, and I will speak to you very, very soon. Take care, stay safe, stay warm, stay humble. Don't forget to give it a like if you enjoy it. It's something a bit different. It's a bit different. It's not just us reporting rumours. We're did some stat stuff as well. So if you liked it, let me know. If you didn't like it, let me know. It's all about your feedback. Take care. Stay safe. Stay warm. Stay humble. Keep the faith, my friends. And come on, you bloody Irons.